This point. I want to bring in Mark Regev. He was Israel's ambassador to the UK and an advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister for many years before stepping aside in 2021. He's been called back to the role of senior advisor just this week in response to this crisis. And I very much appreciate your time. What has happened, Mark, over the past 4 days is horrific and it is unprecedented. The attacks continue. Hamas has fired rocket barrages across swathes of Israel in the past couple of hours alone. Israel's response from the air is intense. And to quote the Prime Minister, this is only the beginning. Mark, just give us a sense of what Benjamin Netanyahu's thinking is at this point. And can you provide any detail on what happens next?
So thanks for having me, Becky. It's a difficult day. It's been a difficult few days. I mean, Saturday ultimately was a trauma for the Israelis. They surprised us. They entered our country. They butchered our people. They took people hostage. And the scenes of brutality that have only become clear in the last few hours when the area was cleared of terrorists are just shocking. And the comparison with ISIS is factual. The sort of brutality we've seen is ISIS-type brutality. Now, what the Prime Minister has said, he said, you know, we've had rounds of fighting with Gaza, unfortunately, over the last decade. And he said, this is not just another round of fighting. This is not another Israeli operation. They have declared war on us. What we saw on Saturday was war. And if they've started the war, we'll finish it, and we'll have to finish it on our terms. We can't lose this. We have to win, and we have to have a decisive Israeli victory. Nothing short of that.
Mark, what does that win mean? What does it look like?
It means a new situation in Gaza, not more of the same. We don't want an aspirin solution. All the people who call for an immediate ceasefire, yes, that's an aspirin solution. That takes you back to square one, and we'll have another Hamas attack like this in a month or two or in a year. That's not a solution. They've declared war, and we will fight this war to the end. And we have to come out with a new situation, a new reality in Gaza, a reality in which there is not a terrorist group in Gaza with both the desire and the capability to hurt us in the way that they've hurt us over the last few days. Once again, they will not have the desire because they will understand that attacking Israel hurts them much more than they can hurt us, and it's not in their interest to attack. And they will not have the capability because we will have destroyed, dismantled their military machine.
How does what happens next, and it seems in all likelihood there will be some sort of ground incursion at this point, and perhaps you can confirm that for me, but how does what happen next ensure that 100, maybe 150 hostages' lives aren't lost? Some of these are American citizens whose family members I've spoken to in the last couple of hours. And of course, how do you avoid the loss of those innocent civilians, Palestinian civilians, who live in Gaza?
So Israel has two goals, and it's difficult. I'm not telling you it's easy, but we have two parallel goals. One is, of course, to do everything we can to free the hostages. And two is to hit Hamas, and hit Hamas hard. And it's crucial that we do that. First of all, to create a new reality in Gaza. And secondly, because other people are watching. Hezbollah in Lebanon is watching. The Iranians are watching. If Israel is perceived as being weak, if these sort of tactics by the terrorists are seen as being good for them, then we'll just see more of this. So it's crucial that Hamas is delivered a decisive blow. It's crucial that everyone else in the region who are our enemies, who harbor the same ideas that Hamas has, also see that Hamas is delivered a decisive defeat.
I guess that begs a very simple question. How does that decisive defeat avoid the sort of casualties that one can imagine, and indeed the loss of life of these hostages?
So the sad truth is, Becky, that there's never been a war in modern history where there haven't been civilian casualties. Our goal is to hit Hamas and hit Hamas hard, and we'll do so. Now, we didn't want this war. I want to say that again. We didn't want this war, but we have been attacked, and we must respond. People ask, why did Hamas attack? Why did they do this assault on Saturday morning? And there are a number of reasons. First of all, they want to kill us, and they make no bones about that, and we saw that in their behavior. Secondly, they wanted hostages, and that's clear. They wanted these hostages, they wanted these human shields, they wanted to do that. And thirdly, on a political level, they want to stop peace in the Middle East. They're very worried. They see Israel and the Arab world becoming closer together. They've seen the Abraham Accords with Israel developing new relations across the region, in Morocco, in the Gulf, the UAE, Bahrain. They're worried about the talk of a breakthrough with Saudi Arabia. For them, for Hamas, for Iran, for Hezbollah, these developments, which the whole world embraces, the whole world supports, for them, this is an existential threat. Their whole raison d'etre, their whole being, is opposed to peace and reconciliation. I would say the following, though. If we succeed, as I believe we will, in inflicting a decisive defeat on Hamas, if we succeed in creating a new reality in Gaza, we will have given Hamas such a defeat that will open space, I hope, for moderate voices, that will open space and actually energize the historic process of reconciliation between Israelis and the Palestinians. You've seen that process up front in your reporting from the UAE. Hopefully we'll see that more in other countries, and Hamas won't stop us from doing that.
Mark Regev, it is clear now that a unity government is needed for a shocked Israeli public to feel that they are fully represented, and a unity government that can deal with the complexities of this response. What can you tell us about progress towards that unity government? My sources say we're very close. And will it include far-right ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich?
So as you've reported many times, Israeli politics has been very fractured in recent months. The polarization has been quite extreme. And it's been a very, how do I say, a healthy domestic situation. But if there's anything good that came out of this Hamas attack, is that it gave Israelis a reality check. I mean, the people who came into Israel on Saturday morning and murdered us, they didn't care how we voted. They don't care if we like Netanyahu or hate Netanyahu. I have friends on a kibbutz there in the south where people were slaughtered randomly, terrible bloodshed. It's a left-wing kibbutz. They're part of the Peace Now movement. Hamas doesn't care. They slaughtered them anyway. And I think for Israelis, as I say, this is a wake-up call. As much as we like to argue and as much as we have our political divisions, ultimately, when we face people like Hamas, we are united because we understand.
I'm going to run out of time here. So, Mark Regev, can I push you on the progress towards a unity government? When can shocked Israelis expect that?
So what's happening in the political process reflects the public feeling, and the public feeling is enough of this division. Let's have a unity government. I believe it's possible. I think it's quite possible that it could happen soon. I think the idea is not to throw people out of the government, but to expand the existing government. I think that would be good. The country wants that. The situation demands it. And I hope it happens. A united Israel is a stronger Israel when we deal with these ruthless enemies like Hamas.
Can I just put this to you, because I think it's very important. There was a scathing op-ed in one of the Israeli newspapers today, pointing the finger of blame squarely at the Prime Minister. In part, that op-ed said, quote, Benjamin Netanyahu should be removed as Prime Minister immediately. Resigning is counterproductive to his personal interests and his criminal charges, it said, not the state of Israel, are what counts. His trial, not Israel's security, is his priority. He has lost all legitimacy and can't be trusted, certainly at a time of war when such monumental decisions need to be made. I'm sure you've read that op-ed. It may be that the Prime Minister has read it too. Does the Prime Minister accept any responsibility for what happens now? And what are his next moves?
Of course. So, of course, he knows the buck stops there, right? He understands that. He's the head of our government, and he understands that he holds supreme responsibility for everything that happens. But if you don't mind me saying, I think that editorial that you talk about doesn't reflect the larger public opinion. Public opinion clearly says, let's work together, let's unite, let's form a national unity government to deal with this crisis. And the fact that the leaders of the opposition, people who have until recently been attacking Netanyahu very strongly, that they are now themselves saying that they want to go into such a government, I think that gives us hope that Israel's moving now, at least in our domestic politics, on a different trajectory.
Mark Regev, Benjamin Netanyahu's senior advisor, thank you very much indeed.